You're listening to Great Love Media.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
The Great Love Debate. It's the Great Love Debate.
Hi again, everyone. It's Brian Howie. Welcome to The Great Love Debate, the world's #1 dating and relationship podcast since 2015. I'm in Ohio, and it's hailing. And I don't know if hailing is one of the signs of the apocalypse, but I've never really been out in a hailstorm before. It's like getting M&Ms thrown at your face. Just getting some kid throwing M&Ms at your face. That's what it feels like. Anyway, first of all, remember, so before I get into what I want to get into, one of the tenets of podcasts and podcasting is that you always record things that are evergreen, which means you don't pinpoint exactly the time of year. It's hailing, so that'll give you a hint, or reference a certain event, or be too specific in when it is, because someone might listen 6 months later and either what you said is no longer relevant, or they may not remember the very thing that you were referencing or talking about. So we're always cautious about that, and I know I've mentioned that before. But there's a few things that are not only relevant but imminent, and I think they are also broad enough things that the basic fundamentals of what I'm going to say will still ring true down the road. If not, and you came to this podcast in mid-2022, hey, there's hundreds of other episodes here to choose from, so have at it. So I am recording this show on essentially Election Eve 2020. So time capsule this, and we'll see how it holds up down the road. And people are really on edge in this country and globally in a way that either we haven't ever seen or we really haven't seen in quite some time. People are locked down, fed up, frustrated, lost, angry, and a whole bunch of other things that don't leave much room for things like optimism and hope. And people are sick or have been sick or afraid of getting sick as they are going into most winters, but especially this winter. And all of those things, physical, emotional, mental, are making people pull back from each other and from reality and from what they wanted in a way that is not only not healthy, but I think it's going to have long-term repercussions if you don't address it, if you don't face it now, and if you don't understand it. So let me first deal with the politics of it all. And many of you know that I also host a show called Political Junkies. And sometimes the love and relationship stuff creeps into that show, and sometimes the politics stuff creeps into this one, which it never would have done before 5 years ago. If I was doing this show 10 years ago and I brought up anything political, people would have thought I was nuts, because in most conversations before 5 years ago, you didn't bring up anything political. So this idea that now people would be putting their voting histories on their dating profiles is absolute lunacy to me. It makes no sense. It's destructive to both your dating prospects and to our society. This idea that you want to be defined or to define someone else by how they felt about a single issue or one single person, that is so misguided, and it is so damaging to your dating prospects and your entire social circle. And I mean, how did we get here? And I do believe that this is just a short-term reaction to Trump. People want to know right away where you stand on him before you even decide if you're going to order the edamame. Like, seriously, people need to know this information right up front. It's the most important thing in their lives. And I don't understand the power he has over some people, pro and con. If you like him or you don't like him, he still holds an inordinate amount of power, an inordinate amount of space in people's brains. And I'm hoping this isn't the new normal. And I'm hoping the phrase new normal is not the new normal, because I hate the new normal and I apologize for using it. You know, what do you believe? What do you stand for? Are you a racist? Should there be kids in cages? And I mean, is this how we want to date? Is this how we want to get to know other people? Is this who we have become? I have questions and I want answers, cute stranger, and we will not go any further with this initial encounter until I see your entire voting history and written opinions. The way we go back and look at everything a Supreme Court candidate has ever written or adjudicated to find out who they are and what they believe, so we can judge the judge before they are even really a judge. This is what we are doing with possible dates now, and it's nuts. And don't give me you can tell someone's values and beliefs, by that bit of information. You know what? No, you cannot. You are basically getting a snapshot in time of where someone was in their life, and that changes all the time. Our lives are made up of billions of snapshots. So picking out 1 or 10 doesn't really give you a read on anything. People's values and beliefs and priorities and preferences change and shift and morph all the time, sometimes on an annual basis. What is their job? Where are they living? Do they have kids? Are they simply a bit older? These change perspectives. Did they drink more then when they thought that? I don't know. Did they have less money then? Is that why they felt that way? I don't know. If you believe you're the same person in 2020 that you were in 2010, or you will be in 2030, I don't know. I hope not. And if you are, I feel terrible for you. Not for being the same person, because you most assuredly are not, even if you think you are, but believing you are. So this need for instant referendum on someone, it's so misguided, and it's such a tiny slice of who they are and what they believe and who they can become. Presidential elections have been going on in this country for 250 years. We are almost at 250. Sidebar, fun fact, in 6 years we will be celebrating either the sesquicentennial or the, I think it's called the semi-quincentennial. Okay? So those that fall on the side of and this is going to be debated to death too, those who seem to want to fall on the sesquicentennial side, it is from the Latin semis, which is halfway, and tertius, which is third. So that's where that comes from. We're going to be fighting over this for the next 5 years. And semi-quincentennial is quin is 500 is halfway to 500. So people are either on the sides of halfway between 2 and 3 or halfway between 5, depending on how you do your math. That's the shit we're going to be fighting over, because we're fucking insane now. Okay? I think I'm going to go with semi-quincentennial. That's just a little bit easier for me. Anyway, that's who we are, and that's what we do in 2020. It's fucked up. Presidential elections have happened many, many times in our lifetimes, no matter how old you are. If you're 20, it's happened a few times and you voted before. But I'm going to be honest with you, and people hate to hear this. For all the anxiety and the shouting and the stress and the social media fights that go on about this stuff every 4 years, 99% of your life and the lives of 99% of people do not change one iota because of who the president is. Sorry. The only shift in anything is some fortunes and agendas of some people who I guarantee you are not listening to this podcast. No matter who wins, we will still have the same issues and problems and fractures in this country, but we will also still have the same hopes and possibilities and power over our own outcome, which are themes that we talk about ad infinitum, more Latin for you, on this podcast. And everything we talk about on this show, it really is about that. Power over your outcome, hopes, possibilities. Your lives are more or less affected in this order. This is the order from center to outside. They're affected first by your immediate partner, your husband, wife, boyfriend, girlfriend, then by your family, then by your social organizations, churches, schools, what have you, then by your community, your local community, then by your city or town, then by your county, then by your state, and somewhere out in Pluto circling your sun is who the president is. Okay? Our country is local and it's essentially private. And some people forget that and don't understand that and have trouble accepting that. But that's the deal. We are a federalist society. We are a collection of states, and states are a collection of communities. And almost the entirety of your existence, day to day and in your lifetime, and ultimately your happiness is contained within that community. And if you don't like that, I'm sorry, you can blame Alexander Hamilton and a bunch of other guys in white powdered wigs. Okay? They set it up that way. And a sidebar and another fun fact. Do you know why they wore wigs? Do you know why they wore wigs back in the day? Well, back in the day, syphilis and a bunch of other diseases tended to leave men balding and with patchiness. So wigs covered up and gave men the feeling of strength and health and nobility. See, we haven't come that far. So if you wore the wig, you seemed healthier. And the more expensive the wig, the higher up you were in society. The men were the Beyoncés of the day. They were the Tyra Bankses of the day. The phrase big wig, have you ever heard he's a big wig? It came from them. Big ass wig meant that you were a badass dude. Anyway, back to my point. No matter how this all shakes out in the days and the weeks ahead, you've got to understand that most of politics is just noise. And the more you can learn to not necessarily tune out the noise, but to compartmentalize it, the better your life will be, the happier your days will be. And the better your dating will be, because it always comes back to that around here. That is what we deal with. And before you start emailing me, you asshole, what about the kids in cages? Well, there were kids in cages before, and there will be kids in cages after, sometimes literally and sometimes metaphorically. We are an imperfect society. We are a giant country. We have a million things we can do better at. It's a game of whack-a-mole, and where you need to choose your poison or pick your battles or focus your outrage, you can do that wherever you see fit, but there will always be something. So I'm not dismissing anything. I'm just saying, well, if it's what about this, then it's what about that. Did some problems and issues come more to light in this country because of one guy? Absolutely. Is one guy responsible, or can one guy change everything? They cannot. We're just not set up that way. So for you listener, take control of what you have control of, and then let those ripples flow out from there. And trust me, they will help everything that's wrong globally. Recycling the can probably isn't going to change pollution in Mumbai, but it certainly helps your house, and it certainly helps your neighborhood, and it goes out from there. So focus on that. Stop worrying about the White House. Stop focusing on who is in there. It's mostly ceremonial. It really has very little relevance or power. And giving it the power it doesn't have and doesn't deserve takes the power away from where it should lie, and that is with you. It's yours. Own it, use it, appreciate it. And you're saying, but how does any of this relate to the fact that you don't have a date on Saturday night? Well, the politics of 2020 are only part of this dating hiccup we're going to get through. And the other one is obviously the pandemic. And those things combining have really made a mess out of the world at the same time. It's a bad confluence of events. Some people will say there's a bigger reason why that's the confluence of events. I'm not going to get in that. But pandemics do tend to put a damper on dating. They just do. It's tough to date when everybody's miserable in lockdown and often sick. So, but I'm going to look at should this put a total wet blanket on your relationship prospects? You know, in the months and in the years beyond 2020, I think we'll be hearing about all the people who fell in love during the toughest times and the oddest of circumstances. I think we will hear lots of those stories, absolutely, unquestionably. So you got to ask, who are those people? Who are those couple for whom this year it worked out? They're the ones who did the work and made it work. Somebody emailed me the other day, and they said, I don't want to date online, but there's no way to meet new people when everyone is locked down and distanced and masked. And I was like, yes, that's a challenge, but it isn't necessarily a barrier. And you're going to be like, how isn't it a barrier? Why isn't it a barrier? Well, I'm going to tell you that right after this. So back to the barrier. Why isn't a pandemic a barrier? So the first way to get around this barrier, and I'm going to take the health part out of it. So if you're sick, stay home. Okay. But if you're not, how do we get around this barrier, this masked distance barrier? Is to, first of all, as my letter writer wrote, you need to stop saying things like, I don't want to date online. Now, our